Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher, and today we're looking at the Windwalker. I've taken a little bit of time with this one because I wanted to give it its due time. The Windwalker's not an easy one. In the very first reveal I did on the Mists of Pandaria beta, I said to you guys quite openly, the Windwalker Monk is not for those looking for an easy ride. It is a thinking man's melee class, something we haven't really seen for a while. I would say it's equivalent to a Moonkin, really, in the kind of changes and progression that the class takes in the middle of a fight that you always have to be on your toes. There are several levels of play in World of Warcraft. Your first is the obvious rotation style, where it's all very cut and clean. Not many classes play by that anymore. And then there's the priority system, which most classes live and die by these days. This spell is more important than that spell, ergo you will press that spell first. And then comes the next tier, which is the conditional style of play, which is what the Windwalker adheres to, and the Moonkins and whatnot. Those are ones that change, and their spell choice isn't as simple or cut and dry as a priority. It depends what's happening in the next few seconds. It depends what just happened. It depends what's going to happen right now. Really not easy. So the Windwalker needs some time. I've included some footage of my learning curve just to show how many little mistakes can go on with the Windwalker. So be aware there are mistakes, but they are learned from. What are they doing with it in Warlords of Draenor? I dismissed the Windwalker because I don't want to sound like a newbie, but I don't like any class that requires a real attention to spellbook, as I like to call it. And attention to spellbook drives me round the bend because I love to pay attention to the raid more than anything. I'm always putting 98% of my attention into what the boss is doing and what everyone else in my raid is doing. Anybody who's watched me live stream will have seen me commenting on things they might not have ever seen because I'm just watching the raid. That's how I like to play. The question is this: what is Blizzard doing to the Windwalker in Warlords of Draenor, and is it what the players want? My version of this, after reading through the notes and playing it for a few days, is this is not going to be the patch that the current Windwalkers want. The Windwalker is the most underrepresented spec of the Monk, which is weird, isn't it? That's a very strange thing to happen. When your other specs are tank and healer, classically the most minor of the spec choices that anybody will pick, they usually go straight for the DPS. Really odd to see that the actual DPS spec of the Monk is the one that's least represented. It hasn't had its moment in the sun in Mists of Pandaria either. The Brewmasters came to mass premonition during the Throne of Thunder, where it was like, oh my god, Brewmasters are hugely overpowered. Mistweavers, very beginning of the game when they had their five charges of renewing mist flying around, and they can uplift an entire raid, no problem, no issue whatsoever. That's when they had their moment in the sun, and they tend to stick around for a while after that. The Windwalker never really got its moment, and that's kind of sad. So Blizzard has decided to slow the spec down, and I think this is really to encourage more people to play what I believe is the most deep class in the game right now. There's so much depth that goes into a Windwalker that it's hard to get people to play it. It's really hard, and people often play it and they go, oh my god, there's too much going on here. Do not like. I want to go back to my rogue. I want to go back to my DK where everything's kind of slow and steady and I can see what's going on, and I have time to make decisions. With a Windwalker, your time to make a decision is greatly diminished. Once you get into it though, as I have done over the last couple of days, it's actually a very nice flowing spec. It actually works on many levels, and the choices you make actually become kind of second nature, but you're only really going to get there with a lot of experience and really putting in the effort to get there. And most players just do not want to do that. They don't want to do that when there are other specs out there, and most often those specs are actually performing higher, doing more damage, and therefore it makes no sense to stick with the Monk. So it's not surprising to see the low representation of the Windwalker. So Blizzard's trying to push people to play it, and by doing so they're just slowing it down. They're giving, slightly more energy cost. They're removing some of the things that people on the face of it seem retarded or stupid, such as Fist of Fury roots you to the floor. It makes no goddamn sense. Don't like it. I'm a melee. I want to move. So they're removing that with a glyph. And a strange choice, actually. I would have liked it to have been able to be mobile by default, and the stun added and the root for PvP. That's how things usually go, is if you're going to modify something so it adds a PvP element, that's usually the glyph. But they're doing the opposite way around with the Monk. Whatever. Not my choice. No, I do not think, this is my problem with this choice for Warlords of Draenor, or what Blizzard's doing, I don't think this actually helps the current Windwalkers much. The people who've stuck with it and I've appreciated how good Fist of Fury can be and how not that much of an issue it is to be rooted. How utterly amazing Storm, Earth, and Fire is. My God, if I speak to a Windwalker today and I suggest even doing a quest without Storm, Earth, and Fire, I imagine they would laugh their asses off because it is amazing. It is truly an absolute joy to play when you can use Storm, Earth, and Fire correctly. But most people cannot, and the tooltip for it is enormous. So they're simplifying it down, they're making it easier to get to grips with, they're just trying to make it that little bit simpler just to allow other people to play. Now, is that a bad thing? No. No, it's not. In fact, overall, even the better players will be happier to see more people playing their class. It means it deserves more attention. It means you're probably going to get changes quicker. But when it's less represented, it's not going to get as much attention as the other classes. It just simply won't. It makes common sense that way. So it's better to have more people playing it, discovering errors, louder voices, shouting out when things need to be done. So having said that then, what are the changes I think Windwalkers do want? Well, I had to speak to a couple. I had to speak to a few because I had some feelings, my gut instincts that I roll with on most of the things for this channel. I was like, you know what, this is just ridiculous, this is annoying, don't like it, what do the other guys think? Let's talk to some pros. So I did. And they kind of agree with me. I think that there's a couple of ideas that the monk has which are really outdated, despite I think it's the most advanced design-wise class in the game. I truly believe that. It's the next level of where we're going. As I said earlier, it's playing on the third level of gameplay, which is this real idea of changeable aspects to your play. There are still some things that are wrong with it. Still some things that I think need to be addressed. Firstly, it's Tiger Power. Every single spec in the game that has had some sort of short-term damage buffing ability that needs to be monitored and cared for has had it removed. Battle Shout, Inquisition, all these kind of silly little things. Yet Tiger Power remains. Why? It's just garbage. It is. Tiger Power is garbage. The damage should be baked into the class at this point. It's pointless to have it on your bars. You have it there purely as a buff button. You don't use it to dump chi. You don't use it for anything else than to keep the buff on. On top of that, it auto-refreshes 9 out of 10 times, which makes it worse. And people go, yeah, but 9 out of 10 times not bad. 9 out of 10 times is actually so much worse than you realize. If something refreshes automatically 9 out of 10 times, I'm of course referring to Combo Breaker, which gives you a free Tiger Strike, so you can get the buff, then 9 out of 10 times you're just simply ignoring whether or not it's on or not. It's that 1 out of 10 times where it's allowed to fall off. And you can be forgiven for allowing it to fall off because usually it's automatically refreshed and it's not a big deal. But then it comes to that 1 out of 10 times and it's like, oh, God. My shitty buff wore off and now I have to spend fucking chi on it when I've got far more important things to spend chi on. Thanks. It's a pain in the ass. It needs to go. All this idea of little short-term damage increases just need to go. I think it needs to go more than Tiger Eye Brew needs to be reworked. Tiger Eye Brew is complete antithesis of everything that is DPS in Mists of Pandaria. A ramp up damage ability just makes no fucking sense. And Blizzard will try and claim that they didn't believe that the pull was going to be that important. Common sense tells you that if it's a period where people are usually blowing Bloodlust, everybody in the raid is using a damage increasing potion and blowing cooldowns, that yeah, your pull is fucking important. So having a ramp up DPS ability, even though it has been given some slack and made a little bit easier, sure, but it just doesn't work, does it? It's not nice. No monk likes having to have a ramp up DPS ability, especially when the pull, everybody is doing millions of DPS and you're like, yeah, cool, but I still have this one ability, I've kind of got to wait for it to sort its life out before I can use it. That's also just annoying. Tiger Eye Brew needs a look at, but Tiger Power, oh God. The frustration I've had with this thing the last few days, and it's the same that most people feel, is like, yeah, occasionally it just falls off and I just feel like an arsehole, because it's such a newbie thing to do. It's like letting Corruption fall off. Well, kind of, unless Corruption was just automatically refreshing most of the time. You never had to bother with it, and I just have this extra keybind for no apparent reason. But enough said about that. What else? Again, the idea of Buffy debuff. Buffy debuff. Rising Sun Kick, applying this important debuff to other mobs. What I found on some occasions is, a good example was actually what's it called? Terrace of the Endless Spring. Su Long, I would be DPSing the little Shah that comes out. He dies, and then he spawns a ton of ads. My instincts and every instinct in the book tells me to use my hard-hitting ability when it's off cooldown, because I want to use that ability as many times in the fight as possible. Every single class in the game works that way. All of them. They all work that way. What is my biggest, hardest hitting ability? The only class that can even claim to not want to do that is the Warlocks, and that's because they have an hour to choose when to Chaos Bolt. That's it. That's the only difference. And the difference is, again, they have ample amounts of time to pick and choose. You don't have that with Rising Sun Kick. It's on the same sort of cooldown as a Mortal Strike or a Bloodthirst or whatever. But it implies an important debuff. So when adds are about to spawn, you're thinking to yourself, I can't really use my big heavy hitting ability here, although every instinct in my body is telling me to do so, because I need to wait a few seconds, and that becomes frustrating. Now, many Windwalkers will tell you that's actually a really good side of the gameplay, right? That's interesting. That's fun. That's me thinking about it. Kind of, but it gets frustrating after a while. You ask any Moonkin, this is why I wanted to compare them, about having to chill out in nature for an extra few seconds just to get a really good mushrooms off while waiting for while other spells are sitting there waiting to be used. It's not as fun as it might seem after the first couple of times. It's not difficult to make it happen, but making it happen is actually like slowing you down, making it not work correctly. Don't like it. Not that I'm saying that it's not interesting, but do we have to have this many debuffs and buffs tied, these short-term little things tied to certain abilities that are important abilities? I really don't mind things like Fist of Fury, which are under complete conditional requirement, because once you start slotting them in nicely, you're doing well with your class, and that's a nice measure of how you're doing with your monk. Really don't mind that at all. I just think we need to heavily move away from this mini buff, mini debuff side of things. It just makes no sense. We have a class here that is just absolutely gorgeous. Windwalker is a gorgeous class. It's beautiful. Absolutely stunning. It's not too fast, as much as Blizzard would like to counter that with its Warlords of Draenor changes. We're slowing it down, guys. It's going to be much better this time, we promise. That's not actually what I think's the problem with them. The problem is they have a lot of mini debuffs and buffs, and when those fall apart, your damage radically drops really fucking stupidly quickly. It falls to pieces, which then brings us on to the second problem. If you're going to have a class based around these mini buffs and debuffs, raid mechanics are actually a huge burden. Similar to how the Mistweaver, things can fall apart when the ramp up has to start again. I'm not just talking about Tiger Eye Brew here, but if you're managing buffs like Tiger Power and your Rising Sun Kick, and you're also managing your Chi generation and your energy usage so you can slip in nice Fist of Fury and play the class correctly, every single boss pretty much in Siege of Orgrimmar has some way of making that come to a grinding halt. I'm talking about aim, I'm talking about a crawler mine chasing you, I'm talking about mind control, I'm talking about having to move for anything. Near enough every single boss in the Siege of Orgrimmar has some ability that can be cast on you, which then brings down your whole house of cards. And instead of rushing back into the action and getting back on with things, you're rushing back into the action to start your ramp up process again. Other classes just simply do not have that issue. They suffer from the fact that they just couldn't melee, they couldn't be in range for a few seconds, and their abilities are ready to go. With a Windwalker, not so much. You only have to stop DPSing for a few seconds before your energy is starting to cap and your Chi's going to waste. So being put out of commission for a long time, oh boy! Oh boy, is that a bummer. Real bummer. In conclusion to this one for Warlords of Draenor, with the direction we've seen from Blizzard so far, this is going to be the changes to just bring more people to the class to get them working on it. To make it less off-putting. Because right now, the Windwalker to the majority of people is off-putting. It is off-putting. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to manage. And other classes just do not have that burden and do more damage. It's as simple as that. The classic Windwalkers, the guys stuck with it, and the guys who love it, who love this little micromanagement style, it's not really going to be the patch for you. I don't think it's going to address the major concerns, but hell, you've just been through an expansion with those concerns and got away with it. Happy, happy, happy. So therefore, you shouldn't be too pissed either. If you're playing a Windwalker now, it's not going to be much different at all, I don't think. I think you're going to be more than happy. But we're likely to see a lot more Windwalkers coming out because of these changes, and maybe that's going to be better for you long term. That's the way I feel about the Windwalker right now. See you later, guys. Bye.